Good day, everyone.
Today we're going to continue the topic all about the natural law ethics.
At the end of the discussion, the students will be able to A. Define natural law and the church teaching on homosexuality.
And B. Explain natural law.
C. Discuss natural law as the essential need to become a person.
And lastly, identify the different kinds of conscience.
Natural law refers to the general view that moral rules and principles are objectives, absolute and universal truths that can be discovered in the nature of things and in the structure of life itself through the use of reasoned reflection. So, it is a theory in ethics and philosophy that says that human beings possess intrinsic values that govern their reasoning and behavior. It is also based on a close observation of human nature and values.
Okay, now let's talk about the natural law and the church teaching on homosexuality. The church teaching concerning homosexual relation through quite sympathetic to their situation essentially remains strong and unequivocal. Homosexual people must certainly be treated with understanding and sustained in the hope of overcoming their personal difficulties and their ability to fit into society, and their culpability will be judged with prudence. Still, no pastoral method can be employed which would give moral justification to this homosexual act in the ground that they would be consonant with the condition of such people. For according to natural objective, natural moral order, homosexual relation are acts which lack an essential and indispensable finality that every genital act should be judged toward procreation or reproduction. Thus, homosexual acts usually done by LGBTQ are unnatural and considered evil according to natural law and worthy of moral condemnation.
Natural law and the church teaching on masturbation. The Catholic Church teaches that masturbation is always gravely wrong and therefore constitutes a mortal sin. It is objectively speaking a mortal sin. The Catechism says that it is an intrinsically gravely disordered action, the deliberate use of the sexual faculty for whatever reason outside of marriage is contrary to its purpose.
There are four specific ethical principles under natural theory. The first one is the principle of double effect. Second is the principle of inviolability of life. Third is the principle of forfeiture. Last one is the principle of totality. Okay, for the first principle is the principle of double effect. Okay, this principle applies to a situation in which a good effect and a bad effect will result and act with a good or noble cause, intention, or motive. Okay, for example, abortion. Okay, and that lady is pregnant and she's still studying. So, she's going to abort the baby. So, the good effect there is she can finish her study, but the bad effect is she killed an innocent child. So, the principle of double effect will insert in that situation because there is a result of good effect and there is a result of bad effect. Okay, for the second principle is the principle of inviolability of life. Okay, let me read it to you. Human life springs from the religious beliefs that life, any human life, is of infinite value as it is sacred and precious gift from the Almighty Creator. Its worth outweighs everything in the world. It can never be sacrificed by whatever means or by whatever reasons. Okay, for example, as in the case of whose life is more important, the mother or the baby, or the drug pusher or the victim. Okay, it is not correct. All lives are of infinite worth that is a quantifiable that we simply cannot weigh one as against other. Each individual life is itself an incalculable of measure and measurable, including the life of unborn or fetus. An early stage of growth does have all the basic natural rights to life that must be protected from any harm. There is no preference in this principle of inviolability of life. Okay, for the third principle, which is the principle of forfeiture. Okay? Okay, in this principle, the innocent person whose life is put in extreme risk by the intruder who is hell-bent to seriously harm the prospective victim, like for example, rape or there's thief in your house. When you take the life of a person who attempting to kill you, you are killing him but not committing murder. The principle of forfeiture can be used to justify not only acts of individual self-defense but also war and capital punishment. Okay, for the last principle, which is the principle of totality. In this principle, it talks more about the traditional element in biomedical discussion. This particular part or organ of the human body has to be cut off, mutilated, or removed. Hence, it is only when an infection organ is putting the entire body at rest that may be removed. Here, the preservation of the whole body is more important than the conservation of the part. For example, breast cancer, diabetes, and so many more. Because it can result to die. So that is why the preservation of just like what I said a while ago, the preservation of the whole body is more important. Okay, for the natural law as the essential need to become a person. Natural law is recognized by all men regardless of grade, race, culture, or historical circumstances. Philosophers agree that an inner force compels man towards good and away from evil. In this sense, they speak of morality as being written in the hands of men. Paul Tillich elaborates that what we call will of God is actually you essential being with its potentialities, our nature declared as very good by God who created it. It is worth noting that what Tillich described as the content of natural law is precisely our Filipino concept or pagpakatao, which is a moral obligation that arises from human nature, compelling on an individual to be true to his nature as tao, which a person debases himself by his immoral action. He becomes less than a person or what we call masamang tao. On the other hand, one who conducts himself according to his rational demands of his human nature is truly a person or what we call mabuting tao. In the Filipino mind as well as in the consciousness of many people, man is with good or bad depending on how he conforms or not with the demand of rational nature. Thus, natural law is so far as it is principle of human nature is the norm of morality.
Conscience. The word derived from the Latin conscientia, which means trial of oneself, both in accusation and in defense. Conscience describes two things: what a person believes is right and how a person decides what is right. According to Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, through our individual conscience, we become aware of our deeply held moral principles. We are motivated to act upon them, and we assess our character, our behavior, and ultimately ourselves against those principles. In the next slides, we will discuss about the kinds of conscience. The first kind of conscience is correct or true conscience. This conscience judge what is good as good and what is evil as evil. It tells us when something is good choice or bad choice, and that this decision is an agreement with what the thing actually is according to the objective law. So it is correct conscience which feels that getting the property of another without their consent is stealing. Second kind of conscience is erroneous or false conscience. So judge incorrectly that what is good is evil and what is evil is good. So it means that when something is bad, you think it is good, and when it is good, you think it is bad. It is erroneous conscience which tells the husband to have a mistress since it is the macho thing to do. The third kind of conscience is certain conscience. So it is subjective assurance of the lawfulness of unlawfulness of a certain act. So it means convinced without any doubt that an action is good or bad. This implies that the person is sure of his decisions. The fourth kind of conscience is doubtful conscience. It is a vacillating conscience, unable to form a definite judgment on a certain action. Means when you cannot choose between good and bad choices, so it is unsteady. The fifth kind of conscience is scrupulous conscience, is rigorous conscience, extremely afraid of committing evil. It is meticulous and wants incontrovertible proofs before it acts. It worries about things that aren't sinful. This this is a conscience that judge that there is a sin where there really no sin, or that judge that something is mortal sin, it is only a venial sin. The sixth kind of conscience is lax conscience, one which refuses to bother about the distinction of good and evil. Lax conscience means when you see no sin where there is actually a sin. Example of this is if he or she doesn't care about others, he or she closes his mind to what is true and good.